Let's just wait for the recording to start. Yeah. Great. So, good morning, everyone. I am Suhruta Kulkarni, co-founder of GoCrackIt. I am Ahmedabad alum, graduated in from IMA in 2006-8, and we have been running this, series of workshops to help you crack into your dream careers. So, last week we had done a workshop on how to prepare your resumes. The earlier week we had done a workshop on how to choose your careers, and this is the third in the series where we are doing today's workshops on preparing for interviews, right? Best practices on preparing on interviews, right? Next week on Saturday, we have a workshop on preparing for your group discussions, right? And with along with these workshops, we do have a lot of exciting quizzes. You can check out on Go Win by GoCrackIt, where we have quizzes on marketing, finance, product management, consulting, right? Where you can explore what are the different career options in this, and then prepare towards that, right? So that's the idea. Let me quickly start with today's presentation. Before I start, I mean, if you have any questions, right, or if you want me to cover something specific, please feel free to drop it in the chat, and I will cover that, right? So we'll try to kind of wrap up the discussion in around say 25 minutes, and then we will keep it open for question and answers, right? So that I can respond more to your specific questions, right? Great. Is my screen visible? Can someone please respond?
Yes, it is. It is.
Thank you. Okay, great. Yeah, so brief intro. As I said, I'm a PGP 2006-8, have worked in investment banking. Then I started my own financial strategy firm, which worked across real estate, construction, F&B, music industry. I was also part of the IM Bangalore's team, where I was part of the research and publications. And with that, I've published around 8 case studies at Harvard Business Publishing. I'm also, part of the IM Bangalore's different startup programs, and our venture GoCrackIt was incubated over there. And my co-founder is Alok. He's an IM Bangalore alum. He has around 17 years of experience across consulting and has mentored several people to crack interview rounds across Amazon's, Google's, consulting firms such as the MBBs and the Big Fours. So MBBs are basically McKinsey, Bain, BCG. Big Fours are Ernst and Young, KPMG, Deloitte, PwC, and Accenture, right? I mean, so between me and Alok, we have mentored and helped people crack their interviews, right? So cracking interviews is not luck, right? Cracking interviews is not about what you have done so far. Cracking interviews is about preparing a plan and executing it with relevant practice relentlessly, right? So we have enabled people to even crack impossible looking interviews, right? So it's I mean, it does require a lot of hard work from your end, but it's completely doable, and you will require some time, right? Patience, right, to kind of get over there, right? So between both of us, we have seen a lot of success across our platform. We have mentored 20,000 students so far, right, across different institutes. So we work with institutes majorly, the IIMs, ISB, SPJMRs, LBSIM, Goa Institute of Management. So we work with several MBA schools as well, and have helped students to crack their interviews, right? So one, I mean, this is specifically for students who are there in the B school right now. Do what happens typically when you're on a B school campus, right? There is a lot of pressure inside the campus, right? So be cognizant of these pressures, right? That if you have come to a B school, or if you're doing any graduation, or even if you're working, right? There's a lot of pressure from the peers, from the society around us, right? Uh, do not bog down to the pressures, right? You have to figure out what You need to explore different things, experience different things, right? And enjoy the entire journey, right? And think from, and for doing this, you need to think from both long term, medium term, and short term perspective, right? Don't always just live in the short term where you want to crack this next interview or you want to get into this job, right? Think from a slightly longer perspective, right? Having said this, at points in life, failures do happen, and all of us have gone through it, right? And that's perfectly okay, because with failures you learn a lot, right? And this happens in interviews as well, right? That is where, don't get demotivated if you, are not able to crack any interview or something, right? It's a great learning process to move ahead, right? So with that, let me start with the specific agenda for interview best practices. We'll start by understanding from what recruiters look at in a candidate during interviews. Then we'll look at different types of interviews and why different recruiters use these different types of interviews, right? So these could be resume based, situational, behavioral based, fit based, case interviews, guesstimates, industry domain based interviews. So we'll look at all of these types of interviews. Then we'll also look at certain fairly commonly asked questions, right? And how do you structure your answers? We'll also give a quick, we'll spend some time on online interviews, right? Because that is where, a lot of companies are using that now post COVID. How do you, portray yourself in the best possible manner for online interviews, right? Great. Great. So, what do recruiters look for in a candidate, as we discussed in the last session, even on your resume, right? What are they looking for? One, they're looking at competence for the job, right? Given that this job requires XYZ competencies. So, for example, if you're applying to a job, as an operations manager, right? Are you able to deal people? Are you able to plan things? Are you able to execute things, right? These are the specific competencies required for that job. Now, the recruiter in your interview is going to look at certain traits which will help the recruiter understand that yes, you have these competencies, right? So, that is what you need to convey in the interview, right? So, for that, you need to prepare examples of your past work experience which showcases these competencies, right? And if you don't have a relevant work experience, you could have still done a project and showcase that, or you could have led an event management and showcase your operations and planning skills with that, right? So find out what are the competencies which are required for that job, and hence how you are going to showcase your experiences during the interview which brings about these competencies, right? So that is what the recruiters are looking for. Secondly, if you don't have these competencies, the recruiters are looking at talent or potential, right? So again, would you be able to learn these skills, right, and execute what is required for the given job, right? So this is where you should start by understanding the job description, right? Then start by understanding what the company problems are, right? Start by understanding what are the industry problems for that company, right? So start with job description, company problems, industry problems, right? Also, if you could do, and that happens very often in online interviews, if you know who is going to be your interviewer, try to find out the interviewer's background also, right? Because typically the interviewers will likely ask you things around their experiences as well, right? So for example, you're applying to a consulting firm and the interviewer has worked in the tax practice for say industrial goods, right? It is likely that you would be asked probably some questions from that aspect as well, right? So try to find out what is it that they are looking for, and hence how you can portray your experiences for that, right? Again, no falsifying, nothing doing, because as I said, right, recruiters are smart enough and they can easily figure out things, right? Yeah, so great. So this is something which we have already covered. So how do you look for competencies? Look at the JDs if you are on a campus. Pre-placement talks is something where the companies really tell you, right, what they are looking for. Do look out for websites. See if you can find out mentors from that company. Look at LinkedIn profiles of different people who have worked in that kind of a role, which will enable you to understand what they are looking for in a candidate during the interviews, right? Great. Yeah. So before you start preparing for interviews, right? I mean, as I said, right, planning is very important. Make a target list, right, of what domain, company, and industry that you want to target, right? Now, from your target list, understand what are the key terms which are used for that domain and industry, right? And for that, how will you find it out? Visit websites of different consulting firms. So, for example, look at firms. So, for example, if you're targeting automobile industry, okay, what is happening in the automobile industry, right? You can do a Google search, you can do an industry analysis. But if you look at, say, McKinsey's website and go to industries and click automotive, right, you'll find out what's happening at a cutting edge scale over there, right? What are the business challenges faced by companies, right? Because these consultants, their job is to day in, day out do this only, right? So understand what's happening right now and what will happen in the future by visiting websites of different consulting firms, right? Be it McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Accenture, the big fours, or if there is any specialist consulting. For example, if you're applying for operations supply chain management roles, then Vector Consulting is a firm that specializes in operations and supply chain consulting. Read up from there, right? What's happening right now, right? Definitely your target company's websites. I mean, do know everything about it. Read different thought leadership articles, case studies, and as I said, I can't emphasize enough on this, right? Your job description. I mean, you should know that inside out and you should have analyzed that, right? Great. So let's look at resume based interviews. So why do companies do resume based interviews, right? What's the objective? So basically they want to understand you as a professional, right? Have you achieved anything earlier? What are your competencies? If you have any work experience, what is the depth of the experience, right? So for example, if you have been working as an accounts executive, right, and you're reconciling receivables, when you're reconciling your receivables, do you understand what is the impact of receivables is on that company, right? Do you have the depth, right, to understand from a business perspective, right? So that is what they want to know. Then they want to also understand what is your working style, right? I mean, are you a leader, are you a manager, are you a team player, who are you, right? That is what they want to understand when they do a resume based interview. Hence it is very important to be very thorough about your resume, right? Your resume is a question paper which you are giving to your interviewer, okay? So that is something which you should know 200% about. And each point on your resume, ask yourself questions on a 360-degree basis, right? And go beyond what you have done. You can't say that, oh, I don't know this, right? If it is something related to what you have done, right? So not knowing any point written on resume is a strict no-no, right? Typically, if you have done multiple job shifts, right, there would be questions around that, right? That why have you shifted jobs so many times, right? Because they want to understand, because a recruiter is concerned, right? Will you stick in my company, right? So be prepared to answer that, right? Back up with solid evidence as to why you did that, right? Typically, don't use answers such as, oh, I had a bad boss, company culture was not good, because you never know, right, what you will land up in the next role, right? But if you have a solid evidence that that you got a better opportunity which enabled you to learn more, or which enabled you to take more responsibilities, right, then that is something which the recruiters will appreciate, right? Or you say that, okay, I wanted to shift my career to this, and which is in line to what you are applying to, right? So prepare answers to these kind of questions, right? You don't want to be caught in a situation where you don't know what to answer during the interview, so prepare on that. Secondly, if you have poor academics, right, and a lot of people face that, like just one of the IMs, which we are working with, a lot of people now who are doing very well, they have got great CAT percentiles and great work experience and everything, but earlier their academics were poor, right? So how do you respond to that, right? So for that also you need to kind of prepare your answers. Again, all should be honest and truthful, right? You could say that, right, that earlier I was interested more in sports or in extracurriculars or whatever it is, right? and I was not really inclined on taking academics more seriously. Then I realized my mistake and then I recovered, right? So if you have done that, this is a very good story to tell, right? Because failing is okay, but not learning from failures is not okay, right? So if you can showcase that in the interview, that would be great, right? If you have traveled across countries, geographies, etc., it is a good thing, because the recruiter understands that you can work with people from different cultures. Okay, and this could be, even if you've done schooling from different places and all that, right? Which is a good thing, right? So be ready to, but you should know, right? I mean, what are the differences in cultures in different places, geographical situations, or whatever is that unique to that place, right? So each and every point on your resume, be prepared with all the details in a very structured format, right? So create an Excel sheet, write your resume point, write what kind of questions could be asked, write what would be your answers. This is how you can prepare for your resume based interviews, right? Yeah, so some of the questions, right, which could be that you have saved XYZ million in this project. This seems unbelievable. Can you explain, right? So a lot of times, people write, something which is very high number, just to, showcase that they have done great work. Now, at times, it is possible that you have actually done that, right? If you are in a position where you are a project manager or leading a team and all of that, right? But it could seem unbelievable to the recruiter, right? And hence, you should be ready with the facts and figures and the breakdowns of these numbers to the last digits, right? And how the entire team also supported you to achieve this, right? If you have done it individually, then what were the tools, techniques that you used to achieve this, right? So be prepared with these details so that you can showcase across that, yes, I can repeat this for your organization, right? They are impressed, but they are not believing you. You need to help them believe that you can do it for their company as well, right? Then there could be questions around that you have worked in this project. Tell me the learning. So for each of your resume point, think through and prepare what were the three key learnings from this resume point. What were the three key challenges from this resume point, right? So be prepared on that resume, right? If you have worked on an algorithm or model or something you have developed, right, be it an Excel model or a code or something, how can you apply it for the recruiting organization, right? Think through on a use case for applying that. That immediately shows that you have researched for the recruiting organization, right? And you are interested in that, correct? Great. So as I said, prepare a interview preparation sheet. Put down all your experience points, academics, everything. Think through on what questions could be asked. Write down the answers to these questions, and then start practicing them. Right? Ask every level why, what, so what happened because you did this, for at least three levels for each point. Okay. Yeah. So, for example, right, this is, let's say that these are the resume points, right, that I have worked in NTPC, which is India's largest and world's sixth largest power generation company. I was an electrical maintenance engineer for gas power station in Gujarat, right? Now, what could be the questions from there, right? So, the questions could start from what happens in electrical maintenance, why did you join NTPC, what are the challenges which NTPC is facing, what would it take for NTPC to become the world's first, the biggest power generation company, what are the challenges in India's power generation, power sector, right? So, from just these two resume points, think through of so many questions which could be asked to you, right, for the interview. And hence you need to make a list of these questions and prepare responses to that, right, with proper context, right? And I will also tell you how to structure your answers, right? Yeah, so these are some of the questions which we have already covered. Great. So let us look at behavioral situational fit kind of questions. So basically, companies want to understand you as a professional, right? And how would you behave or act in the organization, right? And hence they might ask you questions where you have to showcase your knowledge, competencies, skills from the past experiences, right? So the questions could be, tell me a time when you achieved this, tell me a time when you did this, tell me a time when you didn't agree to your boss, and but you still had to complete this project, you believed in yourself and you did that, right? Give me an example of something, right? So these are the kind of questions which you could expect. And hence, from all your past work experiences, we will share the list of questions also, right? Prepare responses to different behavioral and situational questions. I will just go to situational questions in a while. So there are some companies which are famous for behavioral interviews, right? Can you name a company? Maybe you can just unmute yourself and tell me which company is famous for behavioral interviews. I'm sure all of you would have used that company's platform at least once. Anyone? Just unmute yourself and let me know. Okay, if no one's responding, then let me answer that.
Ma'am, is it Google?
Google, to some extent, yes. Google does a lot of behavioral situational questions. You're right. Then there is Amazon. Okay. So Amazon is a company famous or notorious for their behavioral interviews. So they do multiple rounds of behavioral interviews, and any position that you apply for, be it for tech position, be it for HR position, be it for ops position, they will do only rounds on behavioral interviews, right? And they, all those interviews are very scientifically based upon their 14 leadership principles, right? If you just go to Amazon's website, you will find those, right? 14 leadership principles of Amazon. All their interviews across levels, so they start from level 1 to level 9 or 10. The more the levels that you are applying to, I mean, the higher the level that you're applying to, the more leadership principles you need to display, right, in your interviews. That is how their entire interview process is structured, right? But you're right. Google also does a lot of situational behavioral kind of interviews. But Google is also, like, if they're hiring for tech, they also are looking for tech expertise, right? So that is also a given, right? So they might do multiple types of interviews, but Amazon is notorious for behavioral interviews. Great, thanks for that response. Right. So some of the samples, examples of behavioral questions. Or tell me a time when you had to analyze large amount of data to solve a problem. Right. Now, when you respond to all these questions, you have to follow a certain framework, right, called a STAR framework, and we'll come to that in a while, right? Or tell me a time when you have to take a calculated risk, or when you have to take an initiative to solve a problem, when you took a decision under pressure, committed to a team member but could not live up to expectations. How did you earn their trust again? Right? These are all very tricky questions, not very easy to answer, right? But you need to prepare responses to these, right? And it should be from your actual experiences, right? And prepare those responses, and it should come out that you have learned something even if there was a failure, right? And it's okay to kind of fail and move forward from there, right? Yeah, so some of the common mistakes, right, while people do when answering behavioral questions. If you choose a story that is not very impactful, right, which is a simple, some place where it is just routine work and you haven't displayed an initiative or a very great result or outcome out of that, right? So choose an example which is very powerful or impactful, right, for that specific behavioral question, right? Then if you choose a story where the organization team was involved but you are not able to clearly explain what was your role, right? Because they are not hiring the team which worked with you, right? They are going to hire you. So what did you do, right? Your role should be very clearly visible in that story, right? That context is okay, but what did you do? They are interested in that, right? Again, if you don't communicate it well, it's a challenge, and we will figure out what framework that you need to use for that. A story, if you tell a lot of technicalities, right? I mean, if you go into a lot of technology, this, that, right, then the person in front of you may or may not understand the technology. Just tell the technology and what it is used for, right? And then don't go very deep into technicalities unless that person is interested, right? And ask you more questions on that, right? A story which is too much detailed, right? I mean, it's not like telling a story to a child, right, where you can just kind of go around, build details as you go about, right? It's not, you don't need to ramble, right, in an interview. And hence there should be a structure where in the first one or two lines you crisply tell, this is what I'm going to tell, and then you structure it. Always, while you're talking, see whether that person is interested in what you're speaking about, and understand where you need to cut yourself, right? And not just keep on rambling, because you shouldn't disinterest the interviewer. That is very important, right? Right. So again, how do you prepare for behavioral interviews? As I said, please go and look up Amazon's 14 principles of leadership, and put down all the behavioral questions. Prepare all the examples and prepare them using star format. Right. So let's look at, yeah, I will just tell you what the star framework is about. Now, what are situational interviews? So in cases, right, as I said, recruiters also look for potential, right, what you can have for the given job, right? So in cases where you haven't done some kind of work, they might ask you to imagine a situation, right, where this could happen, and hence how you would react to it. So it is similar to a behavioral interview. Only thing is that when it is a situation, it would be about something which you have not done so far, right? And how you can respond to that is, you can take help of something which you have done in the past, to say that there was a similar situation in which I have done this. For this given situation, I might do this, right? So that is how you can respond to situational questions, right? And it could be similar questions, right, as behavioral questions. What will you do if your team members are not listening to you? How do you deal with an unsatisfied customer, right? And these typically get asked in a lot of marketing or customer facing roles, where you have to make really quick decisions, right? What will you do if your team is not able to make decisions, right? Because they want to see that given their company's situations, how will you behave, how will you react, right? Yeah, so these are some examples of that. Yeah, so how to prepare? Come up with a similar situation in the past and answer it like a behavioral question. Common mistakes, again, not using the structure, not providing examples, giving up too early, right? So, for example, what might happen that that your team members are not listening to you. What will you do? Let's say that you respond to it, right, by saying something that I will get all the team members together and explain to them why this is important, etc., etc. The interviewer will ask you, okay, still they are not listening to you. What will you do, right? Now, if you say that I will choose a different team, it means you are giving up very early, right? So you can't say that, right? I mean, you can't give up very early, right? Because it is not easy in an organization to just abandon one team, take up another team, right? That is not possible, right? Hence, you should kind of think through, right, on what different strategies or plans that you could have to solve that problem, right? Running away from the problem is not a solution. You need to stick there and solve that problem, right? If it goes to extreme cases, right, the interviewer says, okay, no, it can't happen, can't happen, can't happen, 5 6 times, then you might say that now that the problem is getting out of hand, let me try a different innovative solution, right? And that is when you can kind of look at something else, right? But don't give up too early, right? If whenever the interviewer is forcing, right, to kind of respond to the same problem in the same situation, right? Yeah, so as I said, the preparation is similar as to behavioral interviews, right? And we will again share Yeah, some tricky questions, right? What are now? Yeah, so we have looked at behavioral situations, some tricky questions. What is your weakness? Right, that's a question which all of us face, right? I mean, could face in interviews, right? Now, don't be evasive. Don't say that I don't have any weakness, right? Everybody has some or the other weakness, right? Uh, you need to actually do a fact finding, right, as to what your weakness is, right? There is a good, if you just Google your strength finder, right? There is a book also around it, and they have a test, right, on how to find out your strengths. Now, once you have found out your strengths, you could also extrapolate, right? What are your weaknesses? Then talk to your work colleagues, right? Work colleagues, right? Do not talk to family or friends. Family and friends love you a lot. They will not give you, honest feedback, right? Even if they, they know that you have certain weakness, they won't tell you that, right? So talk to your work colleagues, somebody whom you don't know, very well personally, but know them professionally, and find out what your weaknesses are. Understand yourself, right? Evaluate why do you have that weakness, and now what plan do you have to overcome that weakness. At the time of the interview, if you have already overcome that weakness, don't tell this is my weakness now. If you have already overcome it, right, then think through of something new, right? Or you could say that this is still work in progress, right? Now, when you have asked about a weakness, don't tell a weakness which is detrimental to the given role, right? If it is a customer handling role, and if you say that you are short tempered, it is absolutely no, right? You won't get the job, that is for sure, right? So, weaknesses should be something which is okay to have, which you should have a plan that you're working upon, but it should not be an immediate detriment to the role that you're applying to, right? Then some questions, right? Why do you want to join this role? Right now, Jen, you need to really think through on how this role can utilize your past competencies, and hence you're adding value, and how this role is going to help you for your medium term and long term goals. All of this should fit in very well. The role that you're applying to, your past competencies, and your medium term, long term goals. Right? Then only you will be able to convince the recruiter why this is fitting into your purpose, right? Because if only you fulfill your purpose, then you will fulfill the organization's purpose, right? And then obviously talk about learning opportunities, what peers that you will be working with, right? Do share some relevant facts, examples which the company might have mentioned on their website or in their pre-placement talk, right? Or if you have connected to people working in that company, right? And if you've understood a few things, then that's a very good thing to do, right? Knowing what people in their existing employees, talking to them, because it shows that you are interested and you are taking that extra effort to understand what this company is doing and what this role is about, right? Which is very important. Great. Industry domain questions. I mean, this is basically to check your understanding of where you have worked. Have you worked in depth, right? So you can study the industry where you have worked in from an industry structure perspective. If you are doing MBA, you would have heard of Porter's five forces, right? Or different frameworks in which to analyze a given industry. What are the key success factors for that industry or role, right? Who are the key players? What is the competition looking like? What are the new trends? What are the disruptions? What's the future potential for this industry, right? So do the thorough analysis of your industry, of the company that you are applying to. Do a thorough analysis of the company, product, services. So for example, HUL, right? If you're applying to HUL typically has an entire selection process around its products, right? Around its marketing campaigns, if you're applying for marketing roles, right? Around its categories or in geographies, right? So you should know a company thoroughly, right? If you're applying over there, right? Understand the function, both, and theoretical and practical aspects of both, right? So that is how you will prepare for industry function. And this is not a separate interview per se. At points, it could be a separate interview round. Typically, this could be also asked in a resume-based interview, right? We just wanted to call out different facets of preparation that you need to do, correct? Okay, now let's quickly look at case interviews or guesstimates, right? So a lot of these, consulting firms, right, or product management firms, or now even lot of startups, right, well-funded startups, right, and lots of companies now are doing case interviews, right? So what is a case interview? Basically, they will give you a one-line description of a business situation, which is open-ended, typically taken from a situation which they have faced recently or in the past. Okay, and why do they do that, right? What's the objective of doing a case interview? It is basically designed to measure whether you can solve a problem, whether you can work in an ambiguous situation. Let's say that you have worked as an operations manager in a cement manufacturing firm and you're applying to a marketing role for an FMCG company. Totally different, different things, both of them, your past and future. And let's say this FMCG's company is planning to, go into say D2C brands as well, right? Acquiring D2C brands, right? So the situation is changing very rapidly for the industry and company as well, right? They want people who are problem solvers and who can work in ambiguous, unstructured situations. And hence they will throw a problem to you of which you are not aware of anything. Can you break down the problem and try to solve that problem? Right? That is what they are looking for. And obviously they are looking at great communication skills, right? Because as a you would be communicating with team, with your clients, your customers, right? So that is where case interview helps to evaluate them, right? As to, are you a problem solver, can you work in ambiguous situations, and can you communicate well, right? Now whenever you are given a business situation or a case interview, do not start immediately by giving recommendations or conclusions, right? They are not looking at a solution in a case interview. They are looking at whether you can approach a problem in a logical way. They are looking at your thought process, right? So do not jump to any solution. You should lay down the approach of solving problem, and it is a conversational interview, right? It is not that they have given you a math problem, 2 plus 2 is equal to how much. That is not the thing. You should ask questions to the interviewer. This is what I've understood, is this correct? Now I'm going to do this, is it okay, right? So it's a conversational interview. If you don't ask any questions and just sit solving yourself, it won't help because they don't understand what you're thinking. And hence the next point, you should think aloud during these case interviews. Interviewer might come back and say that you're not going in the right direction, come back and do something else. Take those hints from the interviewer, right? And we'll share some resources, right, as to how do you approach case interviews, right? In this, because it is they are looking at problem solving skills, it is also important to understand numbers and show the ability to analyze numbers as well, right? Or it might not be numbers, it could be some facts, right? Are you able to take facts and use them for constructively solving a problem, right? So these are the things that typically they are looking at, right? So let's take an example. A telecom company is losing market share. How do you suggest to improve the market share? Okay. I will just take a 1 minute pause. Can you put down in the chat, right? What would be your response to this question? You can just put down whatever comes first thing in your mind. A telecom company is losing the market share. How will you help the company to improve the market share? I just need one liner. Manisha, Preeti, Samidha, Asam. So you're asking, you will ask the interviewer what are the reasons for losing the market share. A good attempt. Is it tariff? Awesome. So, yeah, great. So, Samida, good attempt, I would say. First thing, right? I mean, you need to understand why this is happening, right? Why is the company losing the market share, right? Now, one, you could start by asking, is it something which is happening to peers as well, right? Are we the only ones who are losing the market share? Is there a specific geography or a product in which we are losing the market share, right? Because if you start solving the wrong problem, you end up losing time and not solving the right problem, right? So the reasons that you started with, right? That do we have a higher tariff, right? Which is a good second or third level question, right? So the approach for that is to first break it down. Have they made any changes, right? Pretty great. That, is there something specific that they have made changes to? Or let's say that 5G is coming up now, right? And the company is, sticking to only 4G networks. They might have ended up losing market share in the 5G segment. Do they have exposure to only metro cities, or are they spread over the whole market? Great, right? So understand first where it is operating, right? Geographies, products, what kind of customers do they have? Is it B2B or is it B2C? Is it an internal factor or external factor which affects it? Very good, right? So see, between three or four of you, we have found out, right, which are some of the right questions which could be asked. Now this is like a brain trigger, right? I mean, a case interview is very interesting to solve, right? Because it, enables you to think, right? Yes, any new competitors who are performing better? Awesome, Manisha, right? So when Jio came in, it, pushed away a lot of market share from other companies because of some of their aggressive marketing tactics, right? They slashed prices, they did this, that, and all of that, right? So now, when you're solving the case interview, right? Typically, don't bias it with your past experiences. You can bring in examples of what you know, but don't bias it with that, because till you are clear which market you're solving it for, which product you're solving it for, right? Don't bias it, right? So yeah, so we will look at one structuring also of this on a case interview. Yeah. So yeah, so as we'll probably look at it for a different case. So how to improve? So first, find out where the problem is, right? Break it down. Once you have found out what is the problem, then you have to come up with solutions, right? How to improve that market share. So that is how the entire case interview has to be solved, right? Then, similar to a case, right, which is a business situation, there could be guesstimates. So guesstimates are again designed to solve your problem solving abilities. How many golf balls are there in Singapore, right? Now, I mean, there is no clue, right, of how you would have that, right? But can you start with certain assumptions, right? That, okay, I'm assuming that Singapore is as large as Bombay or Bangalore, right, in terms of area, and which is, almost, has a population of so and so, right? I'm assuming that out of a total population of this, 10% people would be playing golf, or 5%, whatever, right? You can see that because Singapore is a financial markets, specialist, right? I mean, as an industry, that industry flourishes over there, and hence the percentage of golf players might be higher, right? Now, each golf player might be playing these many certain number of times, right, in a year. I'm assuming that they require these many golf balls. Now, again, these are all assumptions, right? But when you're doing that, take the interviewer's approval. Is it okay to make this kind of an assumption? And then start and do your calculations, right? They are not looking at whether you know the area of Singapore, right? They are looking at, can you think logically to solve a problem of which you have no information about, right? Once you start getting some information, then you can put that in your algorithm or model which you have developed, or the logic which you have developed, right? That is what the guesstimates are about, right? Again, as I said, there is no right or wrong answer to both case interview and guesstimates. There are certain approaches which you can follow, and you need a lot of practice to solve this, right? Now, even product management companies use case interviews, right? And typical questions, right, which they have are, which is your favorite product, right? Then, what is one thing that you like most about that product and why? What is one thing which you hate about it, right? If you have to redo a feature for that, product, what will you do, right? So these are case interviews for product management questions, right? Or they can just pull some from your past example and say that, okay, this is the product that, you need to build upon. What will you do in that case, right? So all these case interviews for different roles could have different flavors, and hence what you are applying to, it is important to understand that and prepare accordingly, right? Okay, there is a book called as the Mackenzie Way. Okay, it is, available on Amazon. It is also available, on net as well. Please read this book, irrespective of, what role, what industry you are planning for enabling understanding problem solving. This is a great book to read. Okay, the Mackenzie Way. Okay, please Google it and, kind of get hold of it right away. Okay, then understand key, industry frameworks, right? If you just Google, you will also find a lot of case interview case books, right? So a lot of people have compiled a lot of case interviews, and you can go through that as well. Again, as I said, going through that, reading up is step one. Only practice of case interviews will help you to crack actual interviews, and this is not only for case interviews, for any interviews, right? Do know some macro numbers, for example, India's population or the city which you are living in, that population, right? So that you can benchmark, things against what you know. Some things like, internet penetration, literacy rates, rural, urban distribution, right, of people, right? Some macro numbers. You can't know all of that. There is no need also to know all of that, right? Form a group of two or three amongst yourselves and start practicing, right? Practice is the only way to crack case interviews. Great. So let's quickly look at some commonly asked questions. Tell me something about yourself. That's the first question which any interviewer will ask, and that sets the entire tone for that conversation, right? Now you need to prepare two responses to that, right? One which is a 30-second elevator pitch kind of a response, where in 30 seconds you tell briefly about all your important things, right? And then a slightly elaborate response where you tell more details about your achievements, about your profile, and all of that, right? So prepare both of those responses. Again, when you're talking about tell me something about yourself, talk about your achievements, right? Academic, professional, personal, whatever achievements are there, right? Try to bring in relevant aspects about yourself which are important for the role or the company that you're applying to, right? It's, and it could have been done 5 years before, it doesn't matter, right? Whatever is relevant for the role that you're applying to, front load it in tell me something about yourself. Also end it with a line on what you're looking at, right? Why you're interested in this job or role, right? So that it immediately establishes your interest for that role, right? So this also you need to structure tell me about yourself. And there would be some moving parts, right? Some dynamic parts from your past. What is it that you're bringing which is relevant to the company, and why you're interested for this job and role? Those are some things which you need to tailor for each role that you're applying to, right? You can also close it with something which you want the recruiter to ask questions on, right? Starting from there. Like for example, you say that I successfully completed a power construct, implementation project in this, right? Now the interviewer might ask you, okay, tell me more about this project, right? Which is a natural flow of conversation, right? And you are very, keen on answering that, right? uh Great. So, I mean, if I were asked this kind of a question, right? So typically, I could start with this, right? That I completed. Now, this is a response which I would give when I was doing my MBA, right? Not a response now when I have 16 years of experience, right? At the point of time when I was doing my MBA, right? Probably my undergraduation, my experience before MBA would be something which is very relevant. Now that I have 16, 17 years of experience, I would rather start in a different way, right? And I will show an example of that as well, right? But with say 2 years of experience and during MBA, I will focus on that I completed my electrical engineering from VJTI Mumbai. Good brand name, front loaded, where I did exceedingly well and I was the university topper. Front load achievements, right? I joined NTPC through a rigorous ET selection process. ET is executive trainee process. I'm saying that I went through a selection process. Company recruited me through thousands of applicants, saying that I am valuable, right? Do not shy away from talking about your achievements. It is very important to talk about your achievements. Third, I was the only woman who worked on shop floor in a power plant where typically women are given desk jobs. I chose to do something different. I chose to be on the shop floor in operations because that is core to NTPC and was very important for me as a fresher to do that. I was responsible for maintenance of XYZ. I contributed to first ever plant over in a major plant overhaul of so and so, and I helped save 2.6 million rupees. I look forward to roles such as this, which will leverage on my past experience and learnings from MBA. Right? This was my first year response. In the second year, I was also part of the Student Affairs Council, and I was the first woman in the history of IIM Ahmedabad to be in the Student Affairs Council. Now, 16 years down the line, the way I introduced at the beginning, right? I have experience across investment banking, consulting. I am a Harvard published case author and I am Ahmedabad alumni, right? I kind of don't talk about VJTI, I don't talk about NTPC now, right? Given the context, if I'm applying to a power or strategy role, I will come back and talk about NTPC again, right? In that role, right? So, hence, you need to tailor your introduction according to the context, right? What you are interviewing for, right? Then, if you're pursuing MBA, right, there could be questions around your MBA courses, how MBA has added value to your past experience, right? Be ready with one or two subjects which you know thoroughly. If you're applying for, say, marketing roles, you should know the 4 P's of marketing, application, whatever frameworks are there, for those roles, right? Uh, the reason that it is important to showcase your values from MBA is because they are giving you a premium for doing your MBA, and you should be able to justify that in your interviews, correct? Okay, we have, yeah, structuring your answers. Or write down all your answers in a star framework, right? What was the situation, right? Context. What was your task? What did you have to do? What were the responsibilities, or what were you assigned with? What actions did you take, and what were the results? Now you can flip around the framework, right, and say that I achieved this in this situation by doing this. That is okay if you have to flip around the framework, but you should have a structure to each and every of your answer, right? And this is a good approach to follow the STAR framework, right? Yeah, so these are some of the examples. I will share this with you. I would like to take some questions. Before that, online interviews. See, in online interviews, it is very important to communicate very clearly because they can't see your body language. They are not able to, kind of read your facial expressions and all that very clearly. And also keep engaging with the interviewer, right? If you're going on a monologue for a long time, you don't know whether the interviewer is listening because there could be technology glitches, right? So keep that conversation engaging, have very clear communication skills. Definitely have backup for internet, network. Probably have 2 laptops ready, one mobile ready, right? So that everything is connected and you can switch on if something fails, right? Keep all your projects proofs ready, right? In hard copies, soft copies, everything, right? If you're asked a question for which you don't know something about, do not Google at the time during the interview, right? Treat online interview as an actual interview, right? Where you can't do all this, right? You can't do Googling and all of that, right? Because the recruiter can very easily see through, right? If you're Googling, right? The way I'm seeing here now, right? Into the camera. While if I'm looking in the system, I will look like this in the system if I'm working something on the system. And it's very easy for the recruiter to understand what you're doing. I've seen cases where people have written down their introduction, and in the online interview they're reading their introduction from the laptop. And then the next question that I ask, I can very easily see that they are reading out in their earlier introduction, and now they are fumbling to answer the next question, right? So do not read out. Treat this as an actual face-to-face interview. That is very important. Great. So yeah, so there's a summary. I will share this with you. I'm open for questions if you have any. It got a little more, beyond time what we had planned for, but I hope it was useful. Great. Any questions? Yes, Amida. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi Suhruta.
Yeah.
Uh, it was, I mean, the session was really insightful. Now, one question that I wanted to ask over here is like, I've seen a couple of times that recruiters they ask questions like MBA or an MS. I mean, MBA or MTech. Why? Like for you, if I look at your profile, you've done engineering, you've been into NTPC and all these
Right.
things. Now
Right.
then, joining MBA,
Huh.
that too, let's say you're sitting for a job which is altogether for a role which is altogether different from what you have done in the past. So
Correct.
how do you correlate that, and what is the best way of answering such questions?
Right. Uh, See, one thing, right, which is important. So let me give you an example, right? So post my MBA also, since I was interested in the power sector domain, I did connect with few of my seniors, and I said that okay, if I want to, say join an Adani or a Reliance, right? I would like to join that after even doing MBA, right? Because I was interested in the power sector role, right? So what my seniors and what I learned from there, right, was this, that typically infra companies, they need a lot of engineers and they need very few MBAs, right? So he clearly told that your MBA skills would not be of any use over here, right? Which is valid if you see from an engineering perspective, right? Now, if you go
True.
to one level higher, right, all these companies still need to win projects, right? They need business people for strategy and business development work, right? And if you have a combination of both the skills for that, then it is a win-win situation, right? Which had also happened because I had, roles from infra companies for their strategy or CEO office role, right? Which enables you to understand your use your past experiences, your MBA learnings, and help in contributing to this company, right? So one,
Right.
find a role which is fit as per what your past you have done. Secondly, to respond to your question, right, let's say that you have done MBA but are now applying for tech roles, right, where MBA is not relevant any longer, right? So in that, what you can bring about is the learnings from, let's say if you've done MBA, right, what are the learnings from MBA? People management. Even if you're in tech roles, you still need people management skills, right? Is
Right.
something which you have learned during MBA. You have learned problem solving, right? Which, even if you have to set up an lab and set up an experiment, right, as a post MTech person or somebody who's pursuing PhD, right? How do you plan for it? How do you do about the budgeting? How do you see where to source from? Right? Those are the learnings which you have understood from a business context and which you can now apply to an academic context as well. Correct?
Right. Mhm.
Right? So see what learnings could be useful for this, and don't discount that. Say anything that you learn, any experience which you have had, right? It has something which you can use for future as well. Try to extract that for that role, right? And again, I mean, it could be just one or two things. You don't need to like say that I can use all of what I learned over there. No, it could be just one or two things, which is okay.
Right. So,
Yeah.
for you, I'm asking, let's say you've done, you worked at NTPC. So now, just after BTech, if one asks you, so I mean, what are your plans for a PG degree? What do you say? I mean, I want to ask this particular thing. So
So
if you tell the interviewer that yes, I have a plan of a PG degree, but then in case I get through a good college, I'll go there. Else, I'll join your company. This is actually many people have this in their mind, right?
correct.
But then obviously we're not going to say this to the recruiter. So what is the best way to answer this? That what are your plans for a
Yeah.
PG degree?
Yeah. So see, I mean, if you're applying for a job, right? And if you say that I'm planning to do my, post grad, immediately 1 or 2 years down the line, obviously it doesn't make sense, right? So,
Right.
what you can say is this, right? That I've already completed this, right? Whatever, or you're completing your graduation. This is a role which will help me hone skills for this. Currently, I don't have any plans of doing a post graduation immediately. I might look at it from probably 6 to 7 years down the line. And typically, a lot of people do MBA after 7 years of work, right? If you're planning on that, right? If it's a
Right.
tech degree, I mean, you can just kind of keep it under the wraps, right? Because it doesn't make sense for the company, right? To take somebody who is, immediately planning to go after a year or 2 years, right? Unless they have a program which sponsors this, right? So in that
Yes.
case, I would better align yourself to, what role and how the growth in that role is going to happen, right? They might ask you, where do you see yourself 5 years down the line if you're planning to, continue in this job? So
Right.
better see what progression happens in that role. Let's say you're joining as a software developer. Would you be a project lead after 5 years down the line, right? Or would you like to, look at take up more client handling roles after 5 years down the line, right? So see how the career paths grow. And as we discussed in the last few sessions, right, LinkedIn is a very good source to understand the career journeys over past, over the next 5-10 years, right? So I
So
mean,
that these answers do not look cliche. I mean, मुझे कभी कभी ऐसा लगता है for the reason that recruiters know much more than the interviewee knows. So
correct.
sometimes these answers look cliche also. That okay, this is a standard answer.
Correct. So for that, what you should do a little primary research, right? You can say that
Okay.
I've spoken to a senior of mine who has been on this track, right?
Okay.
And this seems very interesting, right? Then it is not cliche because you've done your homework.
Right. Right. Absolutely.
So back it up with primary and or primary research is always better than secondary research,
Right.
right?
True.
Yeah,
Yes. Thank you.
great, great. Anyone else? Anyone has a question? Yes, Rohit.
Ma'am, sometimes even recruiter ask apart from what your weaknesses, they ask questions related to why we shouldn't hire you.
Hmm.
So, what could be the better way to approach this question?
Yeah, great. So when they ask you, right, why we shouldn't hire you, start with a one-liner, again re-emphasizing your competencies, right? That these are the competencies which you have, and this is the competencies which are required for the role, right? And hence, I think that this is a good fit. However, right, you should not hire me if you find a person which has better competency fit, right, for the given role, right? If that is a person which is there, then you should not hire me, right? So you can answer in it that way, right? If somebody is better suitable for this role, you shouldn't hire me. Number one, from your side, right? If you think that this role would not be suitable for my future career growth, you shouldn't hire me, right? Don't tell them that you are the best person and they should just hire you. They are not looking at that kind of a response, right? So you tell them these two instances. If you find a better person than me, you should hire that person. If you think that this role will not help me in my career growth, again you shouldn't hire me, right? Because if it doesn't fit in your career growth, you will be not happy in this role and you will again anyways leave the company, right? That is why. And then this would be something which is satisfactory, would be satisfactory to them. You understood, Rohit?
Uh, yeah, ma'am. But they might answer again if how then why you should apply it? If you know that the other candidate are more competent than you, then how can you?
Correct. That is where you
Yeah,
start with saying that you have the competency fit, right, as per your understanding, right? If they find,
right,
because you don't know the competencies of other candidates, right? If they find somebody who is better competent, then it is okay, right? And you shouldn't sound very desperate to get a role. If you sound desperate in the interview to get a role, be assured that you won't get that role, right? You won't get that job, right? It should be a fit for
Yeah, ma'am.
yourself and for the company, right? So if you
Right.
just try to say no, no, I'm the only fit person, I'm the one who should get this, it's very clear that you are showing desperation. Desperation leads to nervousness. Nervousness leads to bad performance in the interview,
Yeah.
right? So be calm, be composed, right? Because see, I will tell you, right? So because I run my own firm, right? I know how it
Yeah.
is important for a founder or for an employer to have employees, right? Believe me when I say this, you are doing a favor to the company by working for them, and it is not the other way around. The company is not doing a favor by giving you a salary or giving you a job. You are doing a favor for the company by working for them. Without employees, a company can't run, right? And hence, it is important that the employers, right, find people who will work for them, right? And hence you don't become desperate. You will find a job, and I mean, let me give you my example, right? So when I was doing my BTech, right, as I said, right, I was in VJTI, the best college in Mumbai University. I was the topper, right? And I was interested in getting into core, right? Like I was very clear that I want to pursue what I learned, right? Electrical engineering and all of that, right? Uh, ABB, Siemens, Alstom, right? All companies. I got a shortlist. I cleared the GD round. I cleared the technical interview round at all of these companies. At the final round in HR round, right? Which are the final rounds. I failed in all of these, right? And the reason this happened was because I was getting desperate to get that job, right? Alstom was like the job for me. ABB was the job for me, right? That desperation leads to nervousness, which leads to non-performance, right? And that is something which I learned the hard way, right? I got desperate in the entire placement process. I just applied to one software company. I immediately cracked that because I didn't want that job, right? I just applied to it. They asked me some logical questions. I was good at all of that. I immediately cracked that. Even they were saying, why don't you do your PG and all that? I said, no, no, I want a job. I immediately after getting the job, I regretted that decision because I did not want to get into tech roles at that point of time, right? Then I started looking out for options. Then I got into, I figured out that okay, NTPC is there, and I should start applying to a process which had a 3-4 month long process, right? Now, while going through the NTPC process, I was a little better off, right? One, because I had already some job at hand, right, which was there. I wasn't very desperate, right, on getting this role. I had understood my mistakes, right, which I had done earlier on, right. Hence, and this happened in my MBA interviews as well, right, because IIM interviews, I just had attempted it for the first time, and I was like, okay, this is not the year that I'm going to apply. I'm going to apply next year. This is just a trial run, and when you are not under pressure, believe me, you perform quite well, right, especially in the interview processes. I hope I answered your question, Rohit. It was,
Okay, ma'am. Yeah. Yeah, ma'am. Yeah.
yeah. So don't
Ma'am,
get, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Ma'am, even in guesstimates, like if we say we are assuming like 10% or any specific percentage, they might ask us ki, why just you uh, assume this percentage.
yes. So have some kind of a backup, right? So for
Yeah.
example, let's say for the golf example which you used, right? That I'm assuming that only the senior management of corporates play golf, right? And senior management would
Right.
typically comprise of 10% of the people. Hence, that's my assumption, right? So your assumption also has some kind of backup to that.
Sure, ma'am.
Yeah.
Like, ma'am, in competitions like case interview competition or any guesstimate competition, they just give you the question how many balls. Then it's like the scope of asking ends there because they just put up the question and they want answer after a certain day. Then
Correct.
how can we approach this?
So in this, right, where you have time at hand, right, where you're not in an interview situation, when you have time at hand, you can also very well research, right? And you can also Google, right? in terms of what is the typical percentage of people paying golf and all of that, right? Again, don't take the exact responses, because they don't want a cookie cutter solution, right? If you Google for a solution and
Yeah.
provide that, it will be something which everybody else has done. But research to find out, what could be the frameworks, what could be the assumptions on that, right? Use some of the inputs that, let's say that McKinsey report on so and so says this, right? And hence I'm using that as an input, right? So use inputs from a research, and you can give a source that this is the source from where you have taken these numbers. That also shows that you have done enough research, right? Analysis is your
Right.
own, right? You are doing the analysis, but research is helping you to make the assumptions, which is something which anyways you have to do in a job also, right?
Sure, ma'am. Thank you,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions, observations, comments, anything? Yeah, Manisha.
Hi, Suhrata.
Yeah.
So, thank you for this session. It was really interesting. I got some more ideas actually. And just one curious question in which field you completed your MBA and why did you choose that? How did that really help you in your career? Just curious to know.
Okay. So at IIMs, typically for the PGP program, at least at IIM Ahmedabad, Bangalore, Calcutta, they don't provide any specialization, right? So it is a general MBA program. That's what they call it. But you can choose your electives in your second year, right? And I chose electives in finance, strategy, and entrepreneurship because those were the areas in I was interested in. Again, I chose also some very random electives like logistics management. Simply there was because there was one great faculty, and I wanted to take a course with him, right? And he was not there, in my first year core courses. So I chose courses based upon my area of interest and faculty. That is how I chose courses based upon how they are offered over the terms. How did they help me? So obviously, because I went into investment banking roles post my MBA, obviously all my finance courses helped me. Strategy courses help me to think through from a business situation and help me to interact with clients, right? Because when you are getting into investment banking roles, you immediately start dealing with very senior management of your corporates, right? You're talking to the CFO, to the finance team, to the CEOs, and all of that, right? So it helps to have a strategic understanding of how business models are framed. And in M&A, right, because transactions are done from a strategic perspective, it helps that perspective. Courses on entrepreneurship, I mean, obviously, right, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur since past 5 years, right? So that it definitely, helps to kind of look back, take learnings from there. More importantly, right, courses are one part, and what you learn is, the second part. The connects that you make at the B school, right? I'm in touch with the faculty even now, right? 14 years down the line. In fact, some of the faculty are now my life mentors, right? So they even mentor me for my entrepreneurial journey and all of that, right? So those connects with the faculty, with your peers, right? That is even more important, right, than the courses, specializations, and all of that. And this kind of builds out over the life, right? So I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, thank you so much, Surita. Because one catchy line like life mentorship, whatever you said, so
Right.
that really means a lot. Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
So, just one thing out of curiosity again. So, what drove you into learning and development, Suruta, if you may answer?
Right. So see, I mean, we started GoCrackIt, right, 5 years ago, right? And the whole, reason, right? So I got into investment banking post my MBA, right? When I landed up in the role and I figured out, okay, I have to do financial modeling day in, day out. I wasn't prepared for it, right? I mean, I hadn't learned how to do financial modeling. I had taken finance courses, but we typically were given models and we had to just analyze, not build models, right? Then there was this whole thing, right? Preparing financial models, preparing investment banking pitches, right? which was something which I wasn't prepared for. That had I been prepared earlier on for my job and known the nuances, I would have done much better in my career, right? Secondly, see, pre MBA, I was working in core sector, right? As I said, I was working in power plants, shop floors. I like doing that kind of an activity, right? Probably the choice which I made of getting into investment banking, right? Because as I said, right, I got into the peer pressure on the campus, right? At IIM's, investment banking, consulting are the roles to get into, right? But probably I should have got into a general management role, right, rather than getting into an investment banking role, right? Because my competencies are there, where I can do people management, project management, lead large programs, right? Investment banking, after say 2 or 3 years, uh, I did that, had great learning, but I realized that the projects which we had got funded, they hadn't seen the light of the day, right? Because of whatever operational issues and all of that, right? But remember, hundreds of crores of rupees turning NPAs, right? Because of whatever issues that, and these were all genuine developers. It was not like they were trying to take money and go off, right? It was not those cases, right? Because at Ernst and Young, we were very cognizant of what kind of clients we are taking on, right? Now that was somewhere where dissatisfaction started coming in, right? That you're doing so much, getting the money, but still the projects are not getting off the ground, right? And that is where when we started introspecting, right, on career journeys per se, right? That something which we fought very hard during MBA times was not something which we wanted to do over a longer period of our career, right? And this kind of led us to make this, enable this for current MBA students and professionals, right? That figure out what career you want to get into, prepare for that. If you are, if you are competent for a given role, if you like that given role, then you will be able to have a happy and successful career. So our vision is basically enabling people to have happy and successful careers. And that is what kind of led us into getting into this.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Okay.
Yeah. And mind you, if you have happy and successful careers, you contribute a lot to the company, which also leads to better economy as well, right? So that's the larger vision, right?
I mean, Suruta, why I asked you this question is because I am into a similar situation wherein, I mean, it's been 9 years that I've completed my MBA, and today
Okay.
I am into learning and development.
Awesome.
I did, yeah, so I was a business analyst, but I mean, for my fervor towards learning and development, after just 2.5 years of working, I switched to learning and development. I mean, I've been doing it since I was a kid, I think. So
Okay.
that's how it happened for me.
Right.
So I tried a couple of other things, but then again, I got back to learning and development. So that's what, so out of
Correct.
curiosity, I asked this question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very good. I mean, you should keep doing what you like, and and then once you've got the expertise, and see how you can multiply that impact, right? Which is where setting up a firm organization helps do that, right? Where how can you multiply the impact which you're doing,
Right,
right?
right.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Very true. Yeah,
yeah,
thank you.
great, great. Any further questions? Cool. So I will share again. We'll share our details. Anyways, you can find it out from our platform. If you have any further questions, would like to connect, feel free to do so. I've shared my email ID in the chat. And look forward to the next Saturday session. We are doing a session on cracking group discussions, especially for people who are doing their graduation and post graduation with less experience and who are part of large cohorts, right? Group discussion is an elimination process which a lot of companies use. So we'll tackle that in the next Saturday's session. We do have a quiz today on, I think it's on finance careers. So all of those who are interested in that, do sign up for that. It's a very interesting career to get into. lots of learning, because you get to learn from a very top view perspective if you're in finance. Do play that quiz, and from 1st August, as I said, we are opening up summer internship preparation courses, which will enable you to get into specific careers of your choice, right? Great. Thank you, everyone, and thanks for being here on a Saturday morning. See you next Saturday, same time. Thank you.